So sorry if it's been a week or so since I've posted my last video. As you guys know, I've been dealing with pretty severe depression lately, and right now I've just been trying to focus on building my art portfolio. So I've been spending the majority of my day working on that. My piano practice and other stuff like that has been taking a sort of a back seat, but I've been still trying to maintain my ability in that end. It's just there's a more pressing thing where I'm trying to pursue a tattoo apprenticeship, so I've just been trying to build my portfolio as much as possible and add a bunch of different tattoo style stuff in the portfolio to try to make it more acceptable to people that I'm trying to get a job from. But in this video, I want to talk about what I was sort of hinting at in my last video, which is basically how DMT and psychedelic experiences, in my opinion, in my experience, they don't really get rid of emotional pain or trauma that is rooted in something that's real. I know that people with depression or OCD symptoms that don't really have an origin, that don't really have a purpose, it's a little easier for it to remedy those certain things. But if you're depressed over certain life circumstances or things that have happened to you, in my opinion, it's unlikely that the DMT experience or any sort of meditative practices in that category can really help too much with those things. And the reason why I want to talk about this is because when I was reading Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now, I was actually listening to the audiobook. He was talking about how certain spiritual practices that involve getting out of the body, so that could include certain things such as transcendental meditation or even yoga, and including psychedelic experiences. Anything that you try to get out of the body to experience something that's supposed to, I guess, make you more enlightened isn't going to actually fix any trauma or psychological problems that happen inside the body. Because when you're outside of the body, yeah, you might be disconnected from the trauma or pain, but sooner or later you have to go back into the body, and that's where all the pain and discomfort is actually located. And until you're able to, I'm assuming, work through that without going into altered states and out-of-body experiences, it's not really going to go away, because you're still going to be left with the same trauma and the same injured body, physical body that you're supposed to, I guess, overcome and figure out how to deal with. And that's basically been my experience with psychedelics. I've had a long history of experiencing trauma and then trying to overcome that trauma by, let's say, taking really extremely high doses of oral DMT or smoked DMT and trying to, I guess, bleed that trauma out of me somehow. But it never seems to work the way that I want it to. It might give me momentary relief that might last for maybe a week at most, but then I'll just be right back into my old habits of feeling the things that I don't want to feel and having the thoughts and traumas that I can't really process properly. And with me, I have a lot of issues with any trauma that happens to me. My brain tends to overplay it over and over, and it causes me a lot of distress because I have to relive those trauma events. And the only thing that I know how to do is basically distract myself from it as best as I can through working on art, for instance. But when I have to go to work, I'm left basically being bombarded with these thoughts because there's not enough stimulus to distract me enough from it. And it's getting to a more severe end where I can't really hide from it even when I'm working on things. It's just sort of building up into something that becomes almost intolerable for me. So that's basically what I've been dealing with, and anytime that I try to use a psychedelic to try to fix that, it doesn't really seem to help much. It just seems to momentarily give me a false sense of relief that isn't really real, and it's just something that doesn't really help in the long run. And I know that psychedelic experiences are very eye-opening for people, and it really helps people in their perspective of things, but my perspective has already been changed very thoroughly with the experiences that I have, and it's gotten to a point where, yeah, I'm a changed person, but I'm still having to deal with the certain traumas that I have, and those aren't going to go away just because I keep having the experience that I know all too well over and over again. It just doesn't really, it's not really going to fix what the main problem is. And to be honest, like, I don't really know how I'm supposed to fix what I've been dealing with. I know a lot of people keep saying let go, and that's something that I try to do, but I often have dreams that bring me right back into the trauma, and I just have thoughts that keep bringing me back to that certain stage where I felt very vulnerable. And yeah, it's just my mind constantly wants to remind me of the times where I felt the worst about myself, and my lowest point of I guess injured self-esteem or something. And it sucks. I really wish that my brain wouldn't constantly attack me this way. I'm just hoping that there might be a positive reason for it. I know that I tend to overwork myself and work really hard when these things happen, just so that I can try to prove the thoughts wrong, or try to I guess redeem myself in a certain way. But I don't really know if that's the best way to handle things. You know, I've been to therapists, and they can't really give me a solid perspective on how I'm supposed to work through this stuff. They basically say, well, it's what you're doing is a lot better than, you know, drowning the pain in drugs or something. So that's basically all they tell me, and they don't really give me any sort of ways that I can I guess protect myself or shield myself from these thoughts. So I'm just left dealing with it on my own, and it gets pretty exhausting. I know that it helps me out when I'm more social and I'm around friends. I think that that's a better environment for me, but I live in a town where I don't really know too many people, so I can only really socialize on the weekends with my friends, because they live in Toronto and I live in a town that's close to it, but none of them really live in this town, so I'm not close enough to them. I have to drive out, 20 minutes to see my friends and everything, so it's not an ideal situation for me. I wish I was around more people that made me feel at home and loved, I guess, and it's really hard for me to have to deal with this stuff it pretty much in isolation. So I just try to use my time as wisely as I can, and try to focus on my career as much as possible. I don't use any drugs. I'm completely sober. The only drugs that I would ever use are just well, I explained my DMT trip, but I don't really see that as a drug trying to get high. It was more of a trying to deal with trauma. So DMT isn't really something that I use that often anymore at all. If I'm with friends, I might have a few drinks to get myself a little bit tipsy and more sociable, but that's as far as it goes. When I'm at home, I'm completely sober and just working towards my career. That's the best way that I can see to handle my situation. So I just wanted to share that. Maybe you guys can have some sort of perspective on it, on how you're dealing with things in your life, and hopefully you guys can relate somehow. Also, I can show you guys some of the things that I've been working on for my art portfolio. One was just a skull with getting script practice. I haven't had much experience with script, so I thought I might try it out with that. And I also did a neo-traditional design. So I'm trying to get around 50 portfolio pieces at least, and there's a few places that I want to try to apply to. One actually says that they accept apprentices as long as you have at least 50 pieces. So hopefully I can get like an interview with them, and yeah, that would be really cool. They're in Toronto though. So that was about it. I'll see you in the next video. Peace out, guys.